And we have 4 folks in the waiting room. Just as an FYI, I'll open it right at the top of the hour.
Yeah, no need to do it before.
And just want to confirm that, Daniel, you're still with us? Great. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, no need to be like interpreting this part, but we'll start at the top of the hour. Yeah. All right. We are 1 minute.
Danielle's like, tell me more about this fizzy water strategy.
Tell me more about your success stories, please. Forward Daniel that email too while you're at it. All right. And we just hit the top of the hour, so adminning everyone now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining today's PRO-WASH Scale Technical Advisory Committee. We really appreciate you taking the time. In the meantime, we're going to request, we have a sign-in sheet, and if people could go ahead and check the box if you're here, and if you're not here, there should be a couple extra blank spaces at the bottom for you to add your name and email. It would be appreciated if you could just use the sign-in sheet, so we can just get a sense of who was able to attend today's meeting. And we'll put the link to the sign-in sheet in the chat. That's perfect. Thanks so much, Bella. So if people would be able to take a few minutes and use and sign your name into the sign-in box and put a little check on the far right column. We will wait for about a minute or so, and then we will go ahead and get started. I think the sign-in sheet begins on page 2, and then extra space if you need it and you don't see your name should be on page 4, I think. So if you don't see your name, please feel free to add it. And hopefully people's Zoom and audio are working this morning. If not, please put in the chat box and we will kind of troubleshoot and make sure that you can hear us as we move forward. So I think I'll wait and maybe 1 more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Just as kind of background, today's meeting is going to be in English and we have French interpretation. So if you would like to listen in French, that's an option as well. So I'll give a minute or so for people to finish signing in. And if you don't see your name, go to page 3 and 4 and please add a row for your name so we can just get a sense of who was able to attend today's meeting. And also, thanks for taking the time out of your day to attend. We know you all have a lot of conflicting priorities, so we really appreciate you joining us. Okay, so I think for now we can just go ahead and get started. So if we go to the next slide. Yep, so you should have an option at the bottom for interpretation. It should be at the bottom of your Zoom window. If you can check the channel that you would like to listen to this in, English or French, then that would be able to, you could choose your language and you should be able to hear it. If not, if you have any challenges, please do let us know and we can help you. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the agenda for our next hour, plus or minus. So I think the first couple of minutes as you're joining, is kind of more of a welcome, and we do appreciate you taking the time. Again, please feel free to add your name in the sign-in sheet. And then we're going to do the next 10 minutes or so will be updates on PRO-WASH and Scale and what we've been up to in the last quarter. And then kind of what we anticipate, a high level thing of what the future activities that we anticipate in the next couple months. Then we'll have any questions and answers if you have any comments on our activities. And then we'll kind of do a really short overview, a session that's not comprehensive, but just an idea on co-creation. And then the last half of this meeting will kind of be breakout discussions in small groups. And then we'll get together at the very end on a debrief and kind of think through next steps and feedback for us. So that's kind of what the next hour will look like. And so hopefully we can go through this together. But if you have any questions or comments or anything comes up in the chat box during the conversation, please feel free to enter it, and we will get to you as soon as we can. So this is the agenda. So if we go to the next slide. So this is a big slide, so just we'll go through it step by step. But this is just a kind of overview of the program support that we have provided, mostly USAID, Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, Resilience Food Security Activity partners, although not all. But we just kind of break it out into kind of the ongoing program support, and then the next slide, which we don't need to go to right now, but that will be emergency. So just highlighting the two differences. And then in PRO-WASH and Scale, we have kind of three main buckets, which you can see kind of as blocks of activities here that on work that we do. So the first one is the capacity strengthening, and this includes kind of training, this includes mentorship, this includes one-on-one technical assistance. And then the second block is this research and learning. And then the third on the right, on the far right, which is peer learning and knowledge sharing. And the peer learning and knowledge sharing, for example, would be kind of our peer learning groups, it would be webinars, etc. And research and learning would be our small grants. It would also be how we're collaborating with activities on specific research that they're doing. So those are kind of the main buckets of activities that PRO-WASH and Scale provide support on. So I think you can hopefully see it, but just not going through each one. But if you look at the capacity strengthening, what we've done in the last quarter, we finished our inaugural Market Systems Development Foundational course. This was an online cohort aimed at resilience food security activity partners. This was from April until June. And so we just finished that. We're currently thinking through next steps, but that was something that we really appreciate everybody who participated and your interest in this. We had a lot of interest. So we're thinking through what that would look like. The second one, sorry, is, oh yeah, thanks everybody for joining. The second one is, we also had a WASH strategy workshop with the Zimbabwe RIFSAs. And we also worked with Gaia on co-facilitating the Cultivate Fellowship. This was in April. We're also looking kind of on supporting the, providing support to, this is our one-on-one capacity strengthening TA, to RIFSAs on various topics. This is just some of them, this is not exhaustive. On agriculture, natural resource management, youth employment, and kind of seed systems. Just in the brackets, those are just an example of some of the resilience food security activities that we've provided support on. In June, we also helped with the Emergency Environmental Health Forum, and we finalized, which you can kind of see a link on the far upper right for one of them. Finalized 2 deep dive reports on household hygienic environment in Ethiopia. So that's kind of a summary snapshot of some key activities that we did from April to June. Then if you move kind of additional buckets, you'll see research and learning and peer learning and knowledge sharing. So if we just kind of start from the left and proceed to the right, You see the research and learning. We collaborated with USAID WASH Pals and SPEAR2 on the design of hygienic environments research in Ethiopia. We're also working with the Maharo, and graduating to resilience learning activities on developing learning briefs. And then if you kind of go to our peer learning and knowledge sharing, I'll just kind of skip over because I know I've been here for some time. We finished the first cohort of the Powering Up Local Consultants Group. That was a lot of networking and learning on kind of livelihoods and markets activities. And we also held a two-part online learning event series in collaboration with Terra UV on water security and resilience in the Sahel region. And we're also continuing our regular peer learning group meetings on WASH, NRM, and climate. So stay tuned for those. We will continue those. So if you go to the next slide, hopefully. Sorry, my computer is a little bit slow here. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. We also kind of have the same buckets, right, that we just had with the program activities, but this is really more focused on the other, our other kind of target area, which is the emergency work that we do. So just kind of on the top is an overview of kind of the working groups and the clusters that we participate, and then kind of a little bit of what we do. So we do a lot of knowledge management, capacity strengthening, et cetera. So kind of under our research and learning bucket, if you have we also drafted a climate change and WASH toolbox in collaboration. So that's something that we have a little picture of that on the kind of an image of that. That's a still draft. We're probably going to finalize it, but just to see what that looks like. We're also continuing work on case studies on emergency drinking water. And again, kind of mentioned previously, we have 3 RFAs. The first one is kind of looking at learnings from closed DIFSA activities. The second is on centering community voices. And the third is looking at climate resilience and emergency settings. During this quarter particularly, we launched and we shortlisted candidates specifically on the third RFA. So that's kind of what we did this quarter. And then if you kind of move to the right, you'll see this peer learning and knowledge sharing bucket. So there should be, we also hosted during this quarter, we did our second emergency partners meeting, BHA WASH emergency partners meeting. The topic on this particular meeting was climate and WASH. And the kind of another thing that we've done is webinars. And that's kind of a top knowledge sharing activities. And we've done a couple webinars during this quarter. One was on the learnings with the Central African Republic on the Seed System Security Assessment Report and Workshop. And then we hosted another webinar in April 18th, I think, on private sector engagement in emergencies with the Hygiene Promotion in Emergencies Technical Working Group. So that's just kind of a high-level overview of some of the activities we've done over the last quarter. So that was a lot. If you have any questions or comments or thoughts, please put it in the chat. If we go to the next slide, this is just kind of in 2024, so this is cumulative. This is kind of where what kind of partners we've been engaged with, particularly RIFSA partners, just to give you a sense of the scope and breadth of who we've been working with. So yeah, so it's a good amount. So if we go to our next slide. Yeah, okay. So this is something that we just want to flag for you and highlight. This is kind of upcoming activities that that's in the next couple months that we either want your input on or we just want you to be aware that this is coming. So currently we're having ongoing permagarden online cohorts. We have 3 cohorts. One of them is in French, and that started, I think, in June, and it will go through August. We will also be doing a seed system security assessment online course and learning group So that's something that will be coming. We also have upcoming in the fall, we have upcoming learning visits as part of our knowledge sharing and learning bucket. And this, most likely, this is a Kenya Nawiri cross visit. This will be in November. We're looking at it on kind of water management, water use, multi-use water, and kind of small system irrigation. We're still kind of finalizing this with the Nawiri teams, but that's something that we will be doing in the fall. We're also in collaboration with the Mozambique RIFSA doing a rapid sanitation market assessment. So that's something that we're looking at. And then kind of the next bucket, you can see this is travel funds. This is not something new. We also had this last quarter, but we do have for some of the conferences, if for WASH, for example, if you've been accepted to a conference, your abstract for a presentation or something like that, and it's specifically a BHA funded activity, let us know and apply for travel funds, and we can see if it makes sense for us. So that's just something just to flag. It's not new, but it's still continuing. And then the next kind of bucket you can see here is webinars and events. So this is just for awareness. We have an upcoming webinar on August 27th on strengthening hermetic storage supply chain through public-private partnership. That's something that's coming up. We will also be co-facilitating an event at World Water Week. And then we will have an upcoming launch of the Climate Change and WASH Capacity Strengthening Toolbox, which we kind of mentioned was being developed as a resource. But we're going to have a launch webinar, and then you can kind of see that same resource. We will be, is under resources in the next bucket. That's this toolbox that we're developing. We're also developing a learning brief in collaboration with a couple resilience food security activity partners. And then you kind of at the bottom, which hopefully people can see, there's a opportunity for review. So we are developing a local WASH enterprise training curriculum. This is kind of aimed at existing service providers like Masons who are looking to become more entrepreneurial or interested in expanding into the WASH sector. We're piloting in this. It's going to be in French and English, and we kind of would like to pilot it in September. So if you would like to serve as a reviewer, or you're interested in more information about this, please contact us. We're happy to provide information. I think it will be, you can contact us at PRO-WASH SCALE at savechildren.org, or you can contact Jess MacArthur, who's also in our chat. Yeah, please, you can contact her directly as well. So that's something that we would love kind of input in as we kind of help pilot it and finalize it and test it out. The other upcoming opportunity or kind of interest that we're looking kind of for thoughts on is on savings groups. So if as part of your program you currently implement savings groups, we're interested in kind of learning more on knowledge sharing around savings groups to kind of inform what we will be doing in the future. So basically, if you're interested in documenting or sharing learning around these savings groups, or joining a cohort to learn about particular like models such as Silk or PSP, then please feel free to complete this survey, which I think we'll put in the chat, but if not, we will send it around as part of the follow-up for this meeting. So if you're interested in the savings groups learning and kind of knowledge sharing around this, please complete this form. We'd love to get your thoughts and input in that. So these are kind of the ongoing activities that we expect in the next couple months. So with that, I think that's pretty much the main things. If there's any questions or comments on any of what I've just said, please feel free to enter in the chat. I know I've just spoken a lot, so please add anything in the chat. Yeah, there's definitely ongoing activities for sure. So if there's anything specific on these, feel free to enter in the chat, or if you're working on anything similar, as Nicole said, please feel free to add it. We're happy to collaborate. Any additional thoughts, inputs will make our activities stronger. So we really appreciate any kind of interest that you may have. Let's see. I think I see something in the chat. Great. Thanks for joining. So with that, I think we can go ahead, I guess, with our next, and if we can come back to any questions or answers in the future as they come up. So the next one is, we're just talking about co-creation. This is kind of the main theme of our session today. This is really a background on co-creation. This is not meant to be a summary of everything on it, but we just kind of wanted to kind of frame our discussion a little bit. So if we go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is kind of a little bit of background on kind of where it developed and the history of it, just from a business perspective. Really, co-creation is used a lot of times in customers and really all stakeholders in product development, really developing new products, and also kind of how do these products resonate, testing them out as consumers. But this has progressed to using co-creation in a lot of different sectors. So it's international development, for example, education. I saw that it's also being used in developing courses, for example, or kind of activities. It's also used in, as we said, business, market, etc. This kind of at the bottom, you can see this image. This is taken from USAID, and I think it's very interesting to look at kind of the range of kind of what was thought between consultation, collaboration, and co-creation. This is from USAID's toolkit. I'll do the link in the next thing, but it's important to think through when specifically to use co-creation and what needs to be in place to be able to use it. So I think this is just a very good overview of the different types. But I think when we think about co-creation and when to use it, one of the things is that it's a really joint understanding of both the problem and the solution. So for example, if you know what the problem is, you know how you're going to address it. Maybe you don't use co-creation. Maybe that's not the best way, but it's more of kind of a joint collaborative activity. And then the other kind of important part about this co-creation is that everybody needs to be involved. There needs to be clear roles and responsibilities and guidelines about co-creation. You need to be able to share information. You need to have decision-making, etc. So I think those are just kind of like high levels of when it's useful, but you need to think of like, what are you creating? Why are you co-creating, and what is it for? And there has to be value really for you and everybody involved. So if we go to our next slide, this is kind of these are some examples of USAID specific co-creation materials. On the upper right, this interactive guide, that's where that image comes from, and it's also this co-creation across the program cycle. Both come from this interactive guide. The USAID is really designed for using co-creation in USAID work. And yes, we will send the learning opportunity USAID's work, but it's something that we can apply in our ongoing work. So these are just kind of more internal to USAID, but it's it's something that we can really use. And I think I pulled out this co-creation across the program cycle kind of icon at the bottom, just to think through when exactly and when can you use co-creation, and what could it look like? So again, this is from USAID's point of view, but I think you can look at, for example, you see it during planning, you can see it during design and implementation. And so implementation, for example, work planning, that's something that we can do, and that's from our side is implementing partners, but also USAID. Planning is, what could this look like, and design, and then kind of also as part of our meal activities. So that's something that might be useful. And just kind of on the right are just kind of resources that USAID has put out on different types and when to use it. So there's the interactive guide, there's also additional information on co-creation, and then there's kind of when co-creation has been used and learnings from the Indigenous partners. So if you go to our next slide. Yeah, so this is an example kind of when co-creation has been used in implementation and some tools that people have used in co-creation. So a lot of times co-creation has been used in workshops, for example. We put in here a link, there's Oxfam Toolkit. That's in English and French. It's mostly aimed at co-creation during workshops, but includes kind of a feedback form that you can use. It includes kind of templates for agenda and background and benefits of using co-creation. So that's just some kind of tools that you could potentially use. The link on mental health, that's how it's been used, particularly in mental health activities, but it includes how it was used in stakeholder mapping and workshops. And then there's additional on urban nature, and then there's a community of practice co-creation toolkit that's focused on how co-creation was used in specifically in generating communities of practice and making them sustainable. This is mostly focused on gender, but it's something that could be useful. And then on the far right, these are just kind of examples of when co-creation has been used in specific activities. So you can see this is not supposed to be exhaustive, but just kind of a place where we can get examples of when it's been used and lessons learned. So you can see there's youth in co-creation, it's been done in joint work planning, and then there was something that was interesting that we found that's kind of a pitfalls and risks of a little bit of when co-creation has been used. And I think what they were saying is it's really important to define what is being co-created, the roles and responsibilities, and it's really important to define in the beginning. And also think through the time periods. If this is going to be a series of workshops and stakeholders, who's going to be involved? This could take time, this could be expensive. But you need to have buy-in and of everyone, and just clarify what exactly is being co-created and when. So that's kind of just a quick snapshot of some kind of tools when it's been used in implementation of activities. So if we go to our next slide, the next one is focused on co-creation and research. And that's kind of another area that we want to focus in on. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much. So again, I'm not going to go through each of these in detail, but there's kind of an impact compass for healthcare research, and that's looking at involving stakeholders in basically all phases of the research. What does it look like in developing the tools, the assessment, the prototypes, etc. But I think as part of that framework, they said it's really important to look at the value proposition of the product and the needs of the end users. So that's just something to think in mind as we develop co-creation. The second one, which is the HIAC activity, they were looking at co-creation specifically in impact evaluations. And they've basically done kind of, if you can kind of look on the slide, they have kind of a summary of what they've learned. And then they also have this image right here, which is the different types of and how they use co-creation. So they use co-creation in developing the research design and also the implementation plan. And they found basically 4 risks four main risks, but in this activity. And so of the reasons why people may not have done co-creation before, but they've tried to address them. And that would be reputational risks for implementers in conducting impact evaluations, the proficiency, research partnerships, and implementation challenges. And in this kind of co-creation, how they've done it with all these meetings, they've addressed kind of these challenges to co-creation. And they were pretty successful. The third one at the bottom is this co-designing assessment of climate change costs. That's kind of the image on the bottom right. And that's really looking kind of at how you co-create throughout the activity. And I think they also have kind of a lessons learned document, and they found it was really important for five main lessons that they've had, which is the first one is establish robust structures for stakeholder management and communications, and make sure that this is really joint, so that everybody can the decision making and activities are joint. So it's value for everybody. You have to clarify mutual expectations, and then you kind of vary your forms of engagement. So this is just an overview of when it's been used and kind of lessons learned in research, and then previously in implementation, and then kind of how USAID does it. So with that, I think that's pretty much it on the background, but we kind of want to break out into discussions on co-creation, and thinking of, in your experience, what does co-creation look like? Have you been involved in challenges and specific successes in co-creation? And then do you see any differences between the program implementation and the research, those two, and then how can we learn? And then for PRO-WASH and SCALE, we have our 3 applied research activities, and whether you have any recommendations for PRO-WASH and SCALE as we move forward in our applied research activities. So that's what we're going to be discussing. And we're going to break out into sectors. So if you're interested in the WASH, join breakout room 1, and to stay here, which will have English-French interpretation. That will be agriculture, livelihoods, and market. There should be instructions on the bottom. I think we can give a couple minutes to join.
Maybe just quickly to say, if you're joining the WASH room, you might get a ping at the bottom where it says breakout rooms and there's 4 squares. You'll click on that and then you'll get an opportunity to join that WASH breakout room. See you there.
And hi, everyone. We'll get started in just a second. Let's see if anyone else still wants to join the WASH room. In this room, we'll be focusing more on the application of co-creation to agriculture, livelihoods, and market-related activities. Well, it's wonderful to have such a large group here joining us. Let me make sure first if everyone has access to the document again, where you have the chance to weigh in directly with any thoughts on this. We are down in our breakout group, we are down on page 8. So if you go ahead and scroll down, there's an option there. We'll take notes for those who just want to speak out loud, but if you prefer to share some thoughts directly in the document, that's great. And for those that I haven't connected with yet, let me just quickly introduce myself. I'm Kristen Lambert, and I'm the Technical Director of PRO-WASH and SCALE, overseeing the activities related to agriculture, markets, and livelihoods. And Jen Mayer is also here, who is our Climate Resilient Ag and NRM Senior Advisor. So yeah, let's go ahead and dig in. As Julia said, this is some time that we would love to hear from you all with your experiences with co-creation, thoughts on how it's applied to program implementation and research, and any challenges or successes you've encountered. So the first question that we wanted to dive into is just opening it up to what does meaningful co-creation look like, and what challenges or successes have you faced with co-creation? And if anyone has any thoughts, feel free to take yourself off of mute and just chime in.
And maybe if people aren't comfortable coming, oh, never mind. I see someone. Larry?
Well, I don't know if we should start this by asking another question, but I'm involved in another project. My university is as a sub-awardee, and the place where they're working, they've kind of kept us at arm's length because they're really trying to build trust in the communities where they're working. And we're seeing even they, from an urban area within the same country, are seen as somewhat outsiders. And so our ability to interact and get the kind of information that helps us do participatory development is a little limited. So it's going slowly, and I'm just wondering how others in the group have dealt with the trust building step that might come just before co-creation.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Let me pause and see if anyone here has a similar experience or some advice on that. And Larry, you didn't mention, but the team of the workers, is it including people from the area of implementation at all, or is it completely kind of external to that area?
It's largely external to that area. Same nationality, but working in several parts of the country, and they're working with small communities that are otherwise not connected to the project management, not yet.
Hey, Christine.
Hi, yes, please go ahead.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much. Hi, everybody. So I am based at Care Zimbabwe. I'm involved in talking with the communities that we are working with. One of the areas in which we collaborate with communities and stakeholders within the private sector, within the government, is agriculture, looking specifically at climate smart agricultural practices. And so one of the key things that we learned as a program is that community visioning approach to development work. It's a very useful approach, and we've been learning a lot from that. I'll give you an example. So we come together, we sit with communities, we look at the key challenges they face as they do their agricultural activities, because for most of them, their livelihoods are based on farming. So it could be dryland crop farming, it could be gardening. So we sit with them, we talk about these challenges they face as they try to produce food for their households. And sometimes food for sale, that surplus which they realize. So we talk about these challenges. We talk about what they can do as communities themselves. And then we talk about where they need our support. So we've seen that prioritizing their work, we come in, we say, okay, which ones are the major challenges they prioritize? We see what they can do on their own, they do that. we come in to support the rest. We've seen that very effective. And I think the co-creation comes in where we design the activities together. So they have the final say. They are the ones who say, we are proposing this. We take a look at what they are proposing. We share with them our experiences as a program. We allow them to even try things out on their own, to learn even from failure. We accept that, they accept that, we move together. So I think for co-creation, this has really helped us. And we are not only doing this for agriculture-related interventions in our program, we are doing it across sectors, how we engage with youths, how we engage with women, pregnant and lactating women, how we engage with different age groups, people, communities with different needs. And it's been an eye-opener for us as a program. I think that's what I would like to share for now. Thank you. Over.
Thanks. That's a fantastic example. Marcia, let me turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I definitely agree with the previous speaker, Rumbidzai. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I think that is really important to start with the trust building, and all of the methods you mentioned sound really effective. I think definitely starting by establishing shared objectives, being sure that all parties can identify where they want to go and where their sort of win-wins are. I definitely also identify with the experience of trying to co-create with the private sector as also being a little bit different because, when we're co-creating with NGOs that all kind of have similar ways of working, there's a lot of things that go unsaid and a lot of assumptions about the way you put together a proposal or what kinds of inputs you need or don't need at which different stage that aren't necessarily shared by the private sector, or when you're working more directly with communities to co-create something. So I think, as was mentioned earlier, like building up that trust, having the shared objectives, and then really establishing ways of working that are kind of sized to fit for each specific opportunity, whether that's working at the community level, like the previous examples, thinking about the private sector or the government or other NGOs. So yeah, I think when those can be tailored is when I've seen the most success in co-creation.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Marcia. That's a really great example, and a good reminder too that this isn't just with community co-creation, but the private sector as well. That kind of model can also have a big impact and presents its own challenges. And that's kind of what I want to pause and see, do any other kind of challenges, successes, or lessons learned in co-creation that others would like to share?
Maybe to add on.
I wanted to share something.
Oh, we have two people speaking. Sorry, I couldn't see who came off first. Go ahead. I saw Meseret. And then,
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me make it short thing to add on about the private sector co-creation process. One of the unique things that we are doing when we cooperate with the private sector is looking at the business model when we are partnering with the private sector, looking at like the cost, the income stream, all those things are critical, especially working in a development program and having a grant-based partnership with the private sector. It's really critical to look into that business model really makes sense, and we're not partnering just to have this grant relationship, but to have a successful business. So looking at the business model, the income stream, the costs, all those things are critical when we do the cooperation activities.
Yeah, thanks for that, Meseret. And let me turn it over to, is it Adafunk? Apologies if I mispronounced your name.
No problem about that. So I am Adefunke. I'm from Nigeria. And when it comes to co-creation, we'll be working tirelessly on that. The government at the federal level, with the states and with the local government level. With the federal government level, we have what we call National Task Group on Sanitation, where we have different MDAs and development partners coming together to strengthen the communities by bringing out policies that will help. Now let's go straight to the grassroots. I mean the local government. There, initially the instructions start coming all from the national, and it is not yielding results. So at the end of the day, they were able to understand this issue of co-creation. And they understand WASH, the climate change, and the nutrition. So they're bringing these three together, the nexus, these three together, is able to build a positive result. Now, in Nigeria, where we're advocating for open defecation, we have a whole state that is open defecation free. So when they brought these three together, they were able to achieve success. And when you mention the private sector, in fact, private sector has really helped too, bringing them in. Some of them, they have corporate social responsibility, where you see that it falls on the aspect of providing water, it falls for providing materials, fertilizers, what agricultural, the people, the farmers need in their communities. Some provided that, then some also provided other things that they needed. Then some also even bring out grants, apart from the one from development aids. So those are the things that we bring together, and we're able to record success in some area. And the work is still ongoing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm curious to hear if we see any differences in co-creation between program implementation and research. And are there opportunities to learn from one another? Does anyone have that experience applying co-creation to research as well as program implementation? Might be that we have more of a program implementation kind of crowd, because I heard a lot of great examples there. So I might just skip ahead to the last one and open it up from your experiences. Do you have any recommendations for our team for PRO-WASH and Scale as we're looking at co-creation within our activities? Any best practices, lessons learned? And Julius, I'm sorry, I think I saw you come off mute. So if you had an answer to the previous question, you're also welcome to hop in on that too. Sure, Marcia, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I don't want to take up too much time if others have ideas as well. And maybe this is more of a response to the previous question than specifically about PRO-WASH scale. But what I think I've seen work best in terms of really collaborative research is when there is a lot more flexibility in terms of like funding, objectives, being able to pivot when needed. And in general, I do feel like a lot of research has more flexibility than program implementation. But when there is that kind of built-in expectation that we are starting with one hypothesis and we're just going to keep changing it as we learn more. That can be, I think, a really effective way to keep dialogue going in both directions, and it can feel a little bit less top-down. And so I, would say that PRO-WASH Scale does a great job of that, but wherever we have flexibility and funding mechanisms, I think that can also really help.
Yeah, thanks for that, Marcia. Does that resonate with anyone else in the group? Are there other things outside of flexibility that you found are kind of key to making this successful? Yeah, go ahead, Larry.
I'll just say one of the things I've been surprised that happens more than once is as a university collaborating with an implementer in research, we were sometimes asked for technologies, bring us ideas, instead of working closely and deeply with the potential beneficiaries to look at their priorities. I mean, that's the problem I thought was a very old-fashioned problem, but I'm still surprised that we're sometimes, as researchers, asked to come with the solutions rather than starting with this participatory process, be it co-creation or some other process, to ensure that we're looking at the right problem and also to examine potential solutions that some of those folks may already be working with that simply need to be communicated more widely.
Looks like we're closing up. So I just want to say thank you so much for, I wish we had more time, but really appreciate all the thoughts that we've gotten in this group.
Okay, thanks everyone for your input. I think people are joining maybe this larger, the main group. I think we will consolidate breakout rooms, hopefully shortly. But again, before we do a kind of debrief, thanks everybody for your input, your time, your suggestions during the breakout group. We really appreciate your active involvement and thoughts on all of the questions that we ask, and also kind of how PRO-WASH and Scale can kind of use these ideas in our applied research and our activities moving forward. So with that, I guess I can turn it over for like a quick 1 to 2 minute highlight of what was discussed in each breakout room. So I'm thinking if we could go first with, I guess, the WASH one. And I guess, Nicole, if you could just do a quick top level highlight of what was discussed.
Yeah, thank you. But yeah, I think we started off with really thinking about what does meaningful co-creation look like. Power dynamics came up very strong throughout the three the three questions, managing those power dynamics, thinking about who's in the room, recognizing that having different people involved in co-creation is really critical, but it might not be appropriate to have them all in the same co-creation session. You might actually want to start off with a general one and then break it down to different groups. George, who was in our room, really highlighted, like, for example, if you have a mayor and a planner, city planner in the same room, the planner might not be comfortable saying some things in front of the mayor. And the same with power dynamics between organizations and NGOs. So that came out strong. Another aspect is really around inclusion and gender and social inclusion and equity, thinking about that throughout the whole process, who's involved, whose voices are heard, who's comfortable to attend, and so forth. Another aspect that was brought up was really around planning and budgeting, thinking about from the start, what does this mean for proposals? Co-creation does take time and money, but then also how are we acknowledging, respecting, and compensating people who do participate in co-creation, because that is time that they're dedicating to this activity. I think also brought up around having a strong facilitator, but that facilitator also needs to be reflective of their own biases that they're bringing into the room. So I think overall, my takeaway from this conversation is that there needs to be a strong focus on planning for co-creation and really thinking through how are you going, that invitation list, the facilitation, the process, who can be involved at what points and so forth. Jess, anything to add from our room?
No, that's great. Thanks so much, Nicole.
Thanks, Nicole and Jess. Kristen, I think if there's anything that we can highlight from the ag NRM markets room.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. We had a really fantastic discussion, and I think where we started with was the point, one of the points that came through is that co-creation might not be the first step, but before that, the importance of building a foundation of trust with the partners. Depending on who's making up the program or the research team, you might not be familiar with that area. You might not have engaged with the partners previously. So kind of building a foundation of trust is really a precursor before you even might get into the co-creation stage. So I really appreciated that point that came up. And we heard from some examples of how trust can be built. We heard from CARE about their community visioning exercise, and that's an important process that has been really effective in bringing community members together to really design activities with the program and build trust and build relationships through that process, and kind of put communities in the front seat in terms of articulating what's important to them, their goals, their objectives, and having a common vision together. And that applies not just to agriculture, but visioning is something that can be done with all different kinds of interest groups in designing a project or ensuring you've shared objectives. We also talked about sometimes that the partner in co-creation might not be community members. There's also the private sector, and co-creating with the private sector also requires ensuring that you have shared objectives. You might kind of speak a different language. You might come to the table with different assumptions, and that's all really important to sort out if you're going to have an effective co-creation and ultimately an effective intervention or relationship. And the point that came up as well, that one recommendations of having a good relationship with the private sector is sometimes having a grant-based approach, ensuring that you have a good business model behind your relationship, and having examined the cost income angle behind that relationship to ensure that it's kind of a win-win and that it makes business sense. We talked a little bit about the different levels at which a program might engage with partners from the government to the community, in addition to the private sector, and kind of how those are a little bit different. And we spoke a little bit, but didn't get a chance to get so far into differences between co-creation with implementation, program implementation, and research. But one point that did come up was the importance of flexibility in funding, flexibility in maybe pivoting your objectives as you learn more. And that's really important if you're going to be effective. And the point was raised that perhaps there's sometimes more flexibility in research than in program implementation to be able to pivot in response to what you're learning. So I'll pause there. There's certainly more, but in the interest of time, I'll just leave it at that. And thanks everyone for your inputs in that discussion.
Thanks everyone, really, for your input. If there's additional input that you want to add or flag, please feel free to continue writing or keep writing or just highlight in the notes document. we will kind of reflect and review and kind of share that out widely with the TAC after this. So as a kind of heads up, if you, this is kind of, if you want to sign up for our newsletter, if you're not already on, that would be great. And we will share out the recording, the notes, and the PowerPoint from this meeting. And if you want to continue inputting, that would be great. So with that, I think we have a couple poll questions that we'd like to your input in and kind of reflect on this, on the meetings, and kind of what would you like to see with these TAC meetings as we move forward. So if you could just take a couple minutes before you sign off to answer these questions, it would be really appreciated. We really value your input so that we can make this time a good use for everybody. And thanks again for taking the time out of your schedule to participate.